Hello, and welcome to the first episode of Leeds Echoes. In this series, I'll be exploring different aspects of Leeds' rich history. Each episode, I'll tell a different story, whether it's a particular building, an entire industry, a lost transportation network. But most importantly, I want to try and figure out how the people that lived and breathed this history felt. History is often very good at remembering specific events. I can readily tell you, for instance, that Leeds was granted city status in 1893. What I can't so readily tell you is how that made the people living in Leeds feel. What did the local butcher think? Or your neighbour? What did the city sound like? And what did it smell like? These are the kind of things I really want to explore in this series, and I'm really excited where the journey's going to take me. Hopefully I'll see some of you on the way. Power stations are loud. Like, really loud. And Kirkstall power station was coal-fired. This meant that on site, the coal was smashed repeatedly, first into small pieces, then into a fine dust which is blown into a furnace. And then not only that, but Kirkstall power station sat in a valley, running southeast to northwest. The hills riding up the side of that valley, hugely populated. Dense networks of late Victorian and Edwardian terraces, sprawling estates of semi-detached from the 1950s. Even more amazingly, this 200 megawatt coal-fired unit, covering an area of more than 104 acres, was running right up until 1976. It seems odd today for such a thing to be sat in such a densely populated urban area. An area that today is breathtakingly beautiful, for the most part. But scroll back a few decades, and attitudes about air pollution and quality of life for poorer communities weren't so great. Leeds had exploded in the Industrial Revolution. Between 1801 and 1851, the population had more than doubled, going from 94,421 to 249,992. By 1901, a mere 50 years later, the population had doubled again, reaching 552,479. To give you some context, in the more than 100 years since 1901, the population has only increased from 552,479 to 751,500. This boom in population was driven by and the driver of huge industrial development in Leeds. Diversifying from a predominantly textile-based economy in the 18th century to being specialists in printing, engineering, and chemical production. Leeds was once described as the UK's workshop. The city was the sole supplier to the entire country of numerous bespoke items, from glazed terracotta tiles to axles. Unfortunately, with this furious flurry of industrial activity came pollution. Lots and lots and lots of pollution. The Leeds skyline was a sea of chimneys. Not only the hundreds of industrial ones burning all sorts of hazardous unknown material, but people's homes, all of them. Every single house would have burnt either coal or wood, which is worse, for all their heat and cooking. The air hung dense and thick. The people choked. The people fell ill. The people died. Amongst all this, power stations burning unimaginable amounts of coal were nestled within these urban areas. Areas that, at the time, weren't strictly that urban. Industries sat alongside rows of back-to-back terraces filled with their workers. Life was unimaginably different. Shared outdoor toilets, sometimes even shared single water supplies. You lived right next to where you worked, and you worked hard. Life expectancy was short. In 1910, you'd be lucky to see 55 if you came from the working classes. Things looked a little better by 1930, with an average life expectancy of between 60 and 65, but still, there was a lot that could kill you. In fact, sometimes it felt like everything was trying to kill you. In Leeds, much like many other UK cities, pretty much everything was made in-house. You look at an ordnance survey map from anywhere from the late 1800s up until the 1950s, and you'll start to notice each building making or doing something that was a direct benefit from or to their neighbour. Clothing factories across from mills, with the dress shop around the corner. It was a never-ending conveyor belt of manufacture and consumption. Thankfully, the Clean Air Act of 1956 began to introduce legal framework for the first time to reduce air pollution. I respect Kirkstall Power Station and the fact that it managed to survive another 23 years before finally being decommissioned and then demolished a few years later in 1979. But let's rewind a little bit. Construction on the station began in 1928, with the first electricity being generated in October of 1930. The station was equipped with 2 British Thomson Houston 25 megawatt turbo alternators. An additional 35 megawatt was added in 1935, and by 1948 the site's combined generating capacity was 200 megawatts. The railway line ran through the site, as did the canal. Both were used for transporting materials into and out of the plant. A wharf was even constructed on the canal, which today has become a quaint little marina full of those adorable canal barges that we've all dreamt about living on. Redcoat Lane formed the spine of the site, connecting it to Kirkstall Road via Gotts Bridge, which was adapted and converted to accept the much heavier weight of its new traffic. Redcoat Lane is actually an ancient right-of-way that had long served as a route for the workers of Armley to cross the river and reach the many mills of Burley and Kirkstall. Finally, the River Aire borders the northern edge of the site and would have provided much-needed water for cooling. It also now appears to be the final resting place of much of the millions of cubic feet of concrete that would have made up the cooling towers. The rest is buried under what occupies the site today. A golf course and a set of modern five-a-side football pitches. After 56 years of generating electricity and 59 years of dominating the skyline, the plant was finally demolished. Its last great roar coming from the controlled collapse of its 2 cooling towers. I can only imagine the residents of Kirkstall at the time were happy to see the back of it. The cooling towers alone had been giving children nightmares for decades. The endless plume of smoke dirtying just about everything it came into contact with. Can't imagine it was easy to keep a white shirt white for more than a few seconds. And yet, despite all of this, I often find myself looking out of my window, down the valley, to the exact spot where it used to sit, and I imagine it still being there. I imagine the noise, constant roar, the smell, acrid and thick. And I imagine the men and women whose jobs it was to work there, to keep the lights on for everyone, keep the trams running to take them home, to keep Leeds alive. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Leeds Echoes. If you enjoyed it, let me know, and hopefully there'll be some more soon. Take care. Stay safe.